So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and this one is going to be another large-scale siege on the Grey Havens, and this one has a little bit of a difference because there is a blizzard going on, so it's a cold day in the westernmost point of Middle-earth, and this makes it somewhat Christmassy. It's not as if there's Christmas lights and Christmas trees outside all of these houses, but it's as close as I can manage, and the real Christmas content as well will happen closer to Christmas itself when the tournament games start being put up, presumably on the official channel. But for now, this one was sent to me, I believe, by Starling. If we just go and have a look at one of these units over here, yes it was. So thank you to Starling for sending this one in. We'll go through the defenders second, of course, because we can see how they've sort of set up their defences there. First of all, we'll go for the attackers, who are here to lay siege to the Elven home, and we start off with Umbar, played by Arcturos. Now Umbar, of course, pretty durable all around. The Corsair pikemen, not so much at range, but they do actually make a pretty effective cheap pike at the front, and I've seen the Corsair pikemen perform pretty well quite a lot of the time, honestly. You know, they tend to do fairly well for Umbar. The problem will be, of course, in an attacking situation like this, they will have to deal with arrow fire on the approach. Some Numenorian shield guard, obviously strong spears. You know, spears, with a few exceptions, have got to deal with that malice, however. But the Numenorian Shield Guard are still a very, very strong unit. It's very difficult to make units like this break as well. I believe the highest tier of Umbar units have got locked morale. I'm not sure whether the Numenorian Shield Guard fall under that or not. I know that the Naruna Aru units will, and stuff like the sort of the really expensive stuff. The Numenorian Shield Guard slot in just behind that, so I'm not sure whether they have locked morale, but even so, very difficult to break, very strong, very good at holding the line. Mass as well in formation. Belagaia archers, obviously pretty much the bread and butter of the Umbar archer line. Very good in a skirmish fight. Those little bucklers give them a little shield value in addition to pretty decent armor values. Not the most damaging archer that you can find, but when it comes to just sort of wearing your opponent's skirmish line down, the Belagaia archers are really very, very good at that. It's what they're designed for. As we move across, Umbar have spread themselves out a little wider. We'll see how well that works for them. Another unit of Numenorian Shield Guard, which we've already spoken about. We have some Corsair infantry, which are the basic infantry of Umbar. You know, essentially you have two options when it comes to filling out your line infantry as Umbar. You have these guys, which are more akin to stuff like the Orcs, you know, much more around their numbers, more so than their quality, but they are relatively cheap. Or you can stump up a little bit more for the Castamir's Legion, which of course pretty much the opposite end of the spectrum. There are less of them in the unit, but individually they are strong, very strong. But they are also pretty expensive, and if you do go for a lot of Castamir's Legion, it does limit your options elsewhere in the Umbar army. Let's go and have a look over here. It is also worth saying that those Corsair infantry did not have the armour upgrade. We've got some Mercenary Guildsmen, which are technically another option that you can bring as Umbar, sort of a more middling option, but you rarely see the Mercenary Guildsmen actually, and that's mainly because I think their stats are a little bit lower than you would expect for the price point. And also they have to deal with the fact that mercenaries have got lower morale, which in general is something that Umbar can circumvent by simply bringing a little bit more quality. Their Corsairs have got low morale, of course, but the rest of their army is unlikely to break easily. The Merc Guildsmen, however, can certainly count themselves with the Corsairs in terms of their morale, but we'll see how well they do, because technically speaking they are, you know, significantly better individually than the Corsair infantry. The armour will certainly help them out as well. And then, interestingly enough, we have the third option, of course, which is my personal favourite, the Castamir's Legion. Probably the unit that I've praised the most throughout the latest patches at any rate. And that's not only because I think they look really nice, although they are covered in snow at the moment. That's because they tend to perform very, very well on the front line. Umbar can often give themselves an infantry edge when they bring a lot of Castamir's Legion. It's very rare that Umbar will come up against a faction which can just outright overpower them in melee in terms of infantry. Stuff like the Dwarves can do it, of course, but it's rare that you'll see Umbar sort of start to lose the infantry fight drastically if they bring a lot of Castamir's Legion. They do pay for that in other areas, of course. More Belagaia archers back here. Of course, we've got some artillery on the attack who still use the Haradrim models, but even so, the catapults should be useful. In this settlement, catapults can often, when they are deployed, whether it's at the beginning of the battle or later on when the last stand is happening, be interesting to see how Arcturos uses that. We do have some Abrazani Nadu Tariq, who of course got those maces, very much based around their AP. Low base attack values, but the AP can make all the difference. As we see with Gondor's armor-piercing spearmen, you don't necessarily have to have the highest base attack to do a lot of damage in the right situations. The Nadu Tariq are quite similar to that, although against lightly armoured units with high skill, the Nadu turret will perform quite poorly. So you do need to bear that in mind. More AP from the Corsair Savages. They have the armour upgrade as well, which will give them a little bit of armour. Having said that, they're still not going to be great at taking arrow fire. The armour will help them a little bit more in melee, you would expect. And obviously a lot of AP damage coming off the Corsair Savages. You know, very cheap for a lot of damage potentially, but it is still obviously a bit of a risk to bring them with how fragile they can be. Some Corsair Pikemen, and then finally we have a unit of cavalry over here on the side, which is going to be the Warlords, which of course is where our Pharazon is going to be. If they can start running around within the settlement, it could be a problem for the defenders, so they're going to need to keep that cavalry bottled up. The second army, we have Ricky Beagle playing as Dol Amroth, and over here we can see the Talon Knights who are blending right into the snow. The Talon Knights obviously multiple HP, very, very strong. Not quite as strong as stuff like the Knights of Anuminas, to be honest, but then the Talon Knights you can have two, I believe, before the cost increases. So that is a pretty significant thing for Dol Amroth. Dol Amroth in general not really thought of very highly in the current patch, but that should change with 0.97. Those factions that are considered a little bit weaker are obviously going to be given boosts. We've got some Belfast Marines, so some Javelins, good to see them, as well as some Doran Ernil Pikemen, and some MITHLOND Men-at-Arms, which obviously the bread and butter of the Dol Amroth line. Some Tirithea Wardens on both flanks over here, so higher tier spears. They do lack pretty considerably next to stuff like the Citadel Guard, which is a similar price point from Gondor. Gondor, of course, very much based around their spears, so you'd expect them to be better, but the Tirithea Wardens are very disappointing when you put them side by side. But they are still a decent quality spear. You know, they will sort of hold down the fort with their mass, their formations, and obviously they do have that anti-cavalry bonus. Got a trebuchet here on the front, which is obviously going to get ready to bombard. There's a single unit over here in front of all of this siege equipment, which is a unit of Doran Ernil archers. Now they do have these stakes, but we'll see if there's any offensive cavalry willing to take the risk to circumvent those stakes to destroy those archers. Again, we've got some MITHLOND Men-at-Arms, very similar on this side as well. The second unit of Talon Knights, Pikes, some Tirithea Marksmen over here as well. And then further at the back, I just overshot them. We do have the Black Swan Vanguard, which actually probably one of the brighter spots for Dol Amroth recently, because this does give them a very high quality armor-piercing infantry on the front line, but obviously that still can't, you know, affect all opponents. You know, if you're up against someone like Linden or Mirkwood, for example, it's unlikely the Black Swans are going to be what you want to go for, because they are expensive. You can only have two before the cost increases, but even so, you know, this is a very strong point of Dol Amroth's infantry potentially. Couple of units of them back here, so a lot of AP so far from the attacking armies all around, I would say. We got Lothlorien played by Master Blaster, and he has got some Lothlorien axes here on the front. Lothlorien are going to get a couple of changes as well. Like I know, for example, the Lothlorien blades are being taken out and being replaced by a more affordable Elven infantry unit, which will give them something more akin to something like the Eldar Makar or the Megil I Erin, which would be probably okay, I think, for Lothlorien, because Lothlorien do struggle a little bit to fill out their army with more numbers because they have so few options. They really have the Sylvan Spears, and that's kind of it. But the Lothlorien axes, this means that they will essentially be the higher quality Lothlorien line infantry unit, and they'll have that spot all to themselves, which will essentially make them sort of a more attack-focused variant of something like the Hiriauth. So they'll have sort of not quite as strong in terms of their defensive values, but they should be able to deal more damage, which certainly is in fitting with how Lothlorien seem to be sort of set up. A lot more focus around their melee damage as a whole. Here are the Sylvan Spears mixed in with the Lothlorien axes over here. And then over here we can see more units pulling the ladder. So this is the Lothlorien Blades. I imagine that the Lothlorien Blades model will still be there. It'll just be the upgrade model. At least that's what I would assume that the devs are going to do, because it is still a nice little model with their blades, which would be a shame to go to waste. We've got some more Sylvan Spears out here on the flank. I believe, yes indeed, we have the multiple HP Horse Archers, the Galathrun Riders. Be interesting to see how they're used, because in a settlement like this, Horse Archers can be a little bit more of a risk, but they are still, of course, very, very strong. Some Maeth'Ilaz Gallan over here as well. Some Lothlorien Spears just in the middle of this formation, obviously strong, heavy Elven Spears. Some more Lothlorien Blades out on the flank. The Karos Galadhon's Guardians, which again, it's not too surprising to see these guys in a siege situation, because they are just so strong. Even though they are pikemen, their stats are still very, very high. They have multiple HP. They're by far and away the best pike unit in the game as it stands. But they do still suffer from some of the same weaknesses that pikes have. For example, when their formation gets buckled, they are still substantially more vulnerable. And of course, no shields. So eventually, a lot of arrow fire will start to take an effect. And then we've got some Sindar Archers, which I believe is going to be where Haldir is, indeed. And they are dual wielders in melee. They do not have the same unit size as the Galathrun Nobles, but even so, it's kind of difficult to pick between them. Usually I'd go for the nobles just because having more men in the unit means you can get more arrows downrange more quickly, but the Sindar archers are still a very, very fine unit indeed. And then the final attacker, as we have a look over here, Khazad-dûm, played by Froggy. Obviously Khazad-dûm, widely thought of I think as the strongest faction at the moment because their infantry is so powerful, it's so difficult to stop them when they get rolling. We've got some warriors of Khazad-dûm here on the front line, so he's gone for the slightly cheaper option as opposed to the 3rd Legion, just sort of standard line infantry, the warriors of Khazad-dûm, but obviously as dwarven line infantry, they are stronger than the vast majority of orc and human line infantry units. And this is obviously going to be supplemented by the 4th Legion. I don't think you'll ever see a Khazad-dûm army that will not have the 4th Legion in it unless they're being substantially changed for 0.97, where sort of the fact they don't have the spear malice and still have good stats means they are effectively line infantry with all the benefits of spears, which is too good to pass up, especially with the extra mass it gives the dwarves in particular. So obviously with the armour upgrade as well, just makes them that a little bit tougher. More warriors of Khazad-dûm here. There is actually some 3rd Legion as well, without the armour upgrade, so they are stronger individually than the warriors, but obviously there are fewer of them. We have some Orc Hunters as well, obviously the Orc Hunters. High damage, more akin to something you'd expect from the Elves, to be honest, especially with their dual axes in melee, giving them a little bit more skill. And then we've got a couple of units of 1st Legion Pikes. They may not be as strong as the Karath Galadhon's Guardians, but they are still an extremely effective pike unit indeed. Obviously they do have a slight shield value as well as high armour, so they can mitigate arrow fire somewhat, but even so, when they get into a sustained and sort of grindy fight, very, very powerful indeed. Some more 3rd Legion back here. Obviously a glut of 4th Legion, unsurprising from Khazad-dûm, and then back here a Dwarven Catapult combined with Balin, who is going to be in the Legion Bodyguard, and then of course the Mithril Guard with their AP. Very, very powerful indeed. So now let's get on to the defenders, who is going to be trying to face Khazad-dûm. We have Peak playing as Mirkwood, backed up by Bobo playing as Isengard. So we have some Hir-Ek as well as some Uruk-hai pikemen. It will be interesting to see how this goes, because Mirkwood's skillful infantry could give Khazad-dûm some pause, although I think they're going to need... Well, they do have some Maethil Asgalan, but we'll get to them in a moment. Uruk-hai Berserkers, unsurprising to see them over here, because they could give the dwarves a bit of trouble with all of their AP damage, multiple HP. We'll see how well they can do in a sustained fight. The Uruk-hai infantry with the armour upgrade over here for the numbers, I would imagine. And then the Hiri-Alth, obviously, for the skill. So this isn't going to be the easiest area to push for the dwarves to push their way through. Eventually, I think they'd probably manage it, though, with the Uruk-hai crossbows and the Maethil Asgalan up here on the hill, though. It's a lot of extra damage, as well as a couple of units of Thurni Tower. And then, if all else fails, we've seen how strong the Arthalion Inanwaith can be. See if they can... that is a strong defence that the dwarves have to try and push their way through. We'll see how well they can do as we go down the snowy streets of the Grey Havens. We get into a couple more of these units from Bobo. We have some Nazkai and the Guards of Orthanc. Obviously two opposite ends of the spectrum here. The Nazkai very much based around very high armour piercing damage values. The Guards of Orthanc based around being survivable with those nice shields and of course the high armour and multiple HP values. And then we have some Eldarenwe Haru Quinga. So Starling of course is going to be playing as Imladris, as we've already seen. Imladris very, very strong overall. With their combined melee skill and armour values, it can be incredibly difficult to wear them down. There's a lot of AP in the attacking armies, which should help that a little bit. The Haru Quinga, of course, high quality arch unit indeed, which can double as pretty decent in melee, as well as some Hir-Ek. Then further down the hill, let's see what sort of defence we've got set up over here. So some Snaga skirmishers who have been let into the Grey Havens for Christmas. Obviously Lothlorien have not been given a Christmas invite this time, and instead it's gone to Isengard. And Lothlorien have brought their mates to see if they can crash the party. The Dunland Veterans, which overall are an interesting unit because they are relatively cheap as line infantry goes. And the reason you'd bring them over the Uruk-hai Raiders, even though there are less of them, is the fact that they have got nice attack values and an anti-cavalry bonus, as the Dunlanders do. In there as well we've got the Uruk-hai Pikemen, and we've also got some Uruk-hai crossbows just in behind, as well as some Snaga. This is a pretty bare-bones crew to try and hold back Lothlorien, I must say. The Lothlorien axes in particular will be pretty nasty to take on. Meanwhile up here a little bit more of a comprehensive defence facing Dol Amroth, it would seem, as Starling has got a combination of Imladris sentries and Eldarenwe Haru Hatal, backed up by some upgraded Uruk-hai infantry. And then there is a lot of reinforcements coming from all quarters, including the Lurtz hunting pack with that body piercing. The Agwe Inanwaith from Peak as well, so Mirkwood going for a lot of quality in this fight. the Aradirith, Amon Lank, and the Dalupeng, Em, and Nuia. So this is a truly horrendous skirmish force that Dol Amroth would have to push their way through if they wanted to attack immediately. Uruk-hai Berserkers as well will certainly stop the infantry for a while, as well as another unit of Eldarenwe Haru Quinga. Moving on up here, it looks as though Starling is going to be taking the vast majority of this defence against Umbar. Norotino warriors and Uruk-hai infantry forming the backstop, as well as some more Norotino warriors. And then over here on the walls, the Eldarenwe Haru Masil, whose stats are really high, and having done some rather primitive tests, the Eldarenwe Haru Masil might just be the most deadly two-handed sword unit in a sustained melee fight in sort of a vacuum. You know, and this includes stuff like the Noldorin Blade Masters and all of the multiple HP stuff that's really nasty. Obviously the trade-off is that they do not have multiple HP, so they are much more vulnerable to arrows and cavalry charges, so you do need to be careful of that. The Eldar Atar with the Eldarenwe Haru Vital, as well as some upgraded Imladris Guardians over here, and then the final few holdouts, we have some Hir-i Alth and some Hir-i Peng, as well as a couple of units of Uruk-hai Reavers just holding down this gate over here. So, without further ado, let's begin. Nearly 40,000 frames on this one, so a battle of good length, as you would expect from a larger siege like this. Now, I would imagine that Lothlorien probably have the best chance of breaking into the settlement quickly, or Umbar, because Umbar, of course, have got 2 gates that they can choose from as opposed to just 1. But also, Isengard are having to sort of hold down the fort over here alone. And as good as the Uruk-hai pikemen can be on the front line, and the Dunland veterans can do a surprising amount of damage. There goes the first wall. Against the quality that Lothlorien have brought to the field today, with sort of all of those Lothlorien axes, blades and spears, you would worry for this Isengard defence, to be honest with you. But I can understand why, because they have, of course, the trade-off for this is, well, it's going to be difficult to see through the blizzard, it must be said. And hopefully the frames will come back to us when people have stopped bombarding the walls. But over here they have stacked up pretty heavily, and that's understandable because Khazad-dûm are so strong with their infantry. So a little bit more in terms of resources have come over here. Another wall has fallen. So yeah, pretty hefty blizzard this, isn't it? But this is good, it's thematic. Or atmospheric. Or both. Meanwhile. So Lothlorien just sort of going up, taking down the gate with their Sylvan Spears. Interesting to see how this develops, because, you know, again, another area in which they're probably not going to get through would be Dol Amroth. I mean, Dol Amroth would certainly be best off just waiting, because, you know, the skirmish force that was arrayed before them as we go into the settlement, they have taken down a wall, but there's so many archers back here just in perfect positions that if they move forward, they're just going to get absolutely slaughtered. Obviously, there's a lot of body piercing from the Dalupeng and the Lurtz Hunt. In fact, there's also a lot of high quality as well. Stuff like the Aradirith and the Agwe Inanwik in particular. You know, they may not have AP or BP, but a lot of base damage, a lot of accuracy. Not going to be missing many of their shots, it must be said. Well, we have some Balagyr archers getting into position here, trying to skirmish. Arrows going over the wall. And honestly, the Uruk-hai Reavers would be a pretty good target, because they would fall pretty quickly, even under basic arrow fire, like the Balagyr archers. And that would also deprive this defence of some of its numbers. This sort of slow start to most large sieges where the attackers peel away the walls. Yeah, this is another area where the attackers could probably have some joy. Now, there is some Hir-i Alth over here, but not enough numbers, I think, to stop Umbar if they really came forward in a big way. You can also see over here the dwarves splitting their army a little bit. A couple of units of 4th Legion heading over here with some ladders, presumably to try and help out Lothlorien, which would certainly give a little bit more impetus to attack this area. My word, this snow. Reshade is on, so I am a little bit concerned if things devolve into a blood fight that there will be a crash or two. But we endure. Crossbows getting into position. Obo needs to be a little bit careful. There's a little gap which it's unlikely that the elves, to be honest, will push through with sheer numbers to try and get into the crossbow, so he's probably fine. Here we can see the Galatran riders have moved forward, and they are shooting through the gate. These towers should be hitting the Galatran riders. Again, horse archers in this sort of situation, not the easiest things to use. The Galatran riders do have a lot of high base damage, and they do have multiple HP, but overall I would question whether it's worth bringing these guys over something like the Galatran nobles, who, when all is said and done, act as very, very powerful infantry as well. It's possible that maybe they expected to see some wargs from Isengard counter-attack out the gate, in which case the Galatran nobles would have been fairly ideal, to be honest, to counteract that, but as it is, it's going to be fairly difficult to see how they're going to be useful. Meanwhile, the Eldarenway Haru Myro are counter-attacking out of the gate, and they do get a nice charge there into the Castamir's Rangers. That would be a big catch for Starling, although he might start losing his Haru Myro here because the Warlords of Umbar very rapidly across. And as good as the Eldarenway are, they are still Lance Cavalry. The Warlords of Umbar as Knights have got the anti-cav bonus and very high stats in general. A lot of damage done to the Castamir's Rangers there though, only 27 of them. That will cut down their DPS a lot. I'd be interested to see if the Haru Myro can get away. They might be able to get another charge into the Belagair Archers here. They need to keep moving, otherwise it's going to be all over for them. Oh, that was a nasty volley from the Corsair Blackguards though. Several of the Haru Myro falling. Blackguards obviously very, very powerful with their javelins and not half bad in melee either, but you would imagine this is probably going to be the end of the Eldarenway cavalry here. They are shaken. It takes a lot to shake up the Eldarenway. And will they escape? I don't know. They're wavering. They are going to escape. So they may yet be a factor later on in the battle, but a good counter-attack overall, I think. Depriving Umbar of their rangers may well prove to be worth it all on its own, because body-piercing archers in a siege situation can be so strong. Over here, another charge from the Haru Myro into some Corsair infantry, just getting a few more kills. At this point, anything more they can get will be a bit of a bonus, to be honest with you. So Arcturus being bullied by the Eldarenway cavalry, but he did a lot of damage to the Eldarenway cavalry in return. Those Corsair Blackguards, that was a very nice volley that they managed to get. Can Imladris really hold down this gate though? There are two gaps in the walls now. Some archer support, some Uruk-hai infantry moving to plug the gaps, but a single unit of Uruk-hai infantry is not going to be sufficient. The blizzard seems to be easing off just a little bit. And we can see the Umbar's army coming into view. Meanwhile, what have we here? More skirmishing going on. The Sindar archers have come forward, which is, you know, pretty much Lothlorien's most elite unit on the field, arguably. You know, the riders and the Sindar archers, both very, very expensive indeed. There's a few dead bodies here, but again, it's mostly Dunland veterans. Which, to be honest with you, if Lothlorien are prepared to sort of use up all of their best ammunition on Dunland veterans, Isengard would probably be more than happy to accept those casualties. Especially seeing as, you know, they still have their own skirmish force just in behind here, which potentially will be able to start firing without any sort of reprisal if this continues. Well, that will be interesting to see. So Dol Amroth actually moving in. The faction which looked to have, in terms of archers anyway, the toughest task of all, is going to be the first one to move in. And you can see these Ethelon men-at-arms are going to be engaging with these Elven spears and actually attacking them in the sides. Has led to an initial engagement which is quite favourable, and Dol Amroth coming forward in a fairly big way now. Unfortunately, however, this is going to lead, as soon as Dol Amroth start to make any real progress, the archers are just going to immediately start firing. And you can see that the body-piercing units that they have over here are immediately going after the Talon Knights. And the Talon Knights are really the backbone of this attack so far, you would imagine. And now the Guards of Orthanc sandwiching these Athlon men-at-arms between themselves and the Eldarenway Haru Vital. And the Athlon men-at-arms, they're a fairly decent frontline infantry unit, but when it comes to a fight like this, this is certainly way above their pay grade. And the Doran Ernal pikemen also being engaged by Uruk-hai infantry, and well, actually just Uruk-hai infantry. They weren't really able to get into a decent enough formation quickly enough. And over here you can see this one unit of Imladra sentries holding back the tide, another unit of MITHLOND men-at-arms coming forwards. But it's really all the arrows that are coming into this Dol Amroth attack which is going to seal their doom. Even from a purely melee perspective, Dol Amroth would need to send forward more than this to win. If I was Dol Amroth, I probably would have been the last ones to start advancing forward with the arrows, with the archers arrayed against me. Jesus Christ, these announcers. Meanwhile, Lothlorien's still content to try and skirmish down. Honestly, if the red team looks at what's happening to Dol Amroth, you know, the time has come to start moving forward to try and draw some attention away from Dol Amroth at least. You know, because if they try and go for the softly approach for much longer, Dol Amroth won't have much of an army left to help them later on. Which, whether you agree with what Dol Amroth has done or not, it's not your choice anymore. You need to move forward, and Arcturus is. He's got some Númenórean shield guard over here. Arrows flowing into this defensive position over here, killing off some of the Uruk-hai Reavers as they try and get into position. The Uruk-hai Reavers would probably be best served not just, well, they are going to charge directly outside, and you know, they might be able to get some kills on the Númenórean shield guard, but ultimately this is a fool's errand from the Uruk-hai. Of course, our infantry is running around in circles by the looks of things. Still, the Uruk-hai now in melee with the Númenóreans. They do have AP, but they're still taking range fire, and the Númenórean shield guard are no pushovers in melee. Not just any old garbage with an axe is going to be able to bring them down. Meanwhile, let's go back over here to see how Dol Amroth's advance is progressing, and it's progressing poorly. The Talon Knights are still here, but they're now being overwhelmed. More Dol Amroth infantry has come forwards. Another unit of MITHLOND men-at-arms, it looks like. Well, is that the same one? I don't think it is. This unit's still in far too good a shape. The Eldrenwe Harumairo now are in the back lines of Dol Amroth's army. There's only 10 of them, but still, with that charge bonus that the Harumairo have, that could be substantial. They are going to charge into the back of this already very damaged unit of MITHLOND men-at-arms. Getting a few more kills, and that might convince them to break. You know, they are in melee with the Imladra sentries after all, not exactly the most favourable of engagements for them. Yeah, and these basic Dol Amroth units certainly not going to be enough here, unfortunately for Ricky Beagle. You know, it was a pretty mean defence that he had to go up against, it must be said. Now though, we do see Lothlorien are starting to move forward, which is good to see. We've got some Sylvan Staff Masters as well as the Lothlorien axes. We can also see some Lothlorien blades. Again, I feel as though this probably should have happened sooner, with how much weaker this defensive position was than the one that Dol Amroth faced. I feel as though trying to skirmish down, sort of just getting a few kills on Dunland veterans was not really worth Lothlorien's time. But here, of course, you can see Lothlorien blades, and in melee against Snaga, with the best will in the world, the Snaga don't really stand too much of a chance. It is also worth saying as well that the dwarves are starting to make inroads. The Athalion Inanwaith have moved over to here, presumably to try and help out. You can see that the Galatharim riders are actually in the settlement, but they're already wavering, taking crossbow fire. And this is the problem with horse archers as well. They're already routing, actually. That's a bit of a shame. Obviously the problem is you can get them into the settlement, but they're still only going to be able to do damage as fast as their arrows allow. You know, they do not have the big burst damage that a nice charge bonus affords you. Here come the 4th Legion, which are going to be able to beat the Dunland veterans in melee, but the Athalion Inanwaith are on station as well, which, that's not going to go too well for the dwarves. The Athalion Inanwaith are such a strong unit, and the dwarves don't have reinforcements nearby either. The rest of their army has stayed put, so this is all that Lothlorien is going to be getting in terms of support, which, you know, a few units of 4th Legion is still a substantial amount of help, especially seeing as this defensive position over here from Isengard has crumbled very, very quickly, actually. You know, again, this probably should have happened sooner from a Lothlorien perspective, but it's happening now, and that's the important thing, as the elves flood into the settlement. Aradirith are in the way. Interestingly enough, the Aradirith's AP not going to be terribly handy against Lothlorien. I'm actually surprised the defenders don't seem to have any sort of contingency for this. most of what they have back here are skirmishers. No, they had to realise, surely, that that Isengard front line was never going to hold back Lothlorien in the long run. And Dol Amroth still have enough in reserve that this could yet turn out to be worthwhile. The other unit of Talon Knights has come forward and they are facing off against the Heru Vital in melee. You would probably back the Talon Knights in that. But with the support of other units around, who knows what would happen. The Guards of Orthanc are holding back this side as well. That Isengard's general? Most curious indeed. The Imladris sentries still holding the line very resolutely. The Tirithea Wardens doing their best, but again they're not really going to be able to do damage at the rate that is going to be necessary to get these Imladris pikemen out of the way. Might be time to commit forward a few more men, I think. Meanwhile, Umbar also moving forwards in a fairly big way. You can see the Númenórean Shield Guard and the Mercenary Guildsmen facing off against another unit of Eldoranway Heru Vital, who actually still seem like victory seems certain. I'm not so sure about that. Eventually, I think they're probably going to start to feel the heat of all those numbers. Meanwhile, those Eldar Atar are getting peppered down by the Umbar and skirmishers. Still some Imladris Guardians and Uruk-hai Reavers back here, but now Umbar's catapult starting to make its presence felt, killing off more of those Uruk-hai infantrymen. So far, however, you can see now I think the defenders might be starting to feel the pressure of this a little bit more, because even in this Dol Amroth engagement where things were going relatively well for them before, Dol Amroth are starting to be able to get javelins into position to start supporting their push, firing into those Guards of Orthanc there, which is going to be bad for them. And now also we're starting to see stuff like the Black Swan Vanguard come forward. Now the Uruk-hai Berserkers should win that, to be fair. The Uruk-hai Berserkers, even with the armour upgrade, are not hugely reliant on their armour. But it does show Dol Amroth's intent that they are moving forward in such a way. Meanwhile, let's see what's happening down here. The 4th Legion have made some progress actually. They've got into the Hiri Peng, into the skirmishers. And they're also being supported by Lothlorien at this point. So yeah, I think over here, I'm not sure how they're going to stop this momentum that Lothlorien have. Meanwhile, the Athalion Inanwe alone against several units of 4th Legion. Probably not ideal. There are also some some dregs of some Lothlorien units over here, as well as some Maitha Ilaz Gelen, which are throwing a few javelins into the Athalion's back. Not ideal for them, it must be said. There's also some Maitha Ilaz Gelen over here. So yeah, things have gone very well actually. Now that Lothlorien are being a lot more aggressive, the tide is turning.
They have lost half their men.
There is a limit to how far this is going to carry Lothlorien, however, because obviously the elves, they don't have the most manpower in the world. Some Gwathi Arthand, which I actually missed in the army compositions at the start, doing their best to hold the line, but again they are spears, primarily based around surviving for long periods of time rather than damage. Obviously the Lothlorien axe is doing some nice damage, but the problem is the skirmishers, which are doing a good job of backing up this front line. The Lurtz hunting pack in the background over there, some Hiri Auth also right here, also some Uruk-hai Berserkers going to support this front line as well. A lot of damage on the Uruk-hai Berserkers, of course. What's going on over here? There was an engagement over here, but obviously this is probably the gate where the defenders were stronger, well, at their strongest. So the dwarves quite content to just sort of wait and skirmish down, which is the right thing to do from Froggy, to be honest with you. Doing some damage there to the Uruk-hai crossbows, just waiting. Because if he waits long enough, obviously, the other gates will eventually fall, you would imagine. In fact, let's go and have a look at what Umbar are doing real quick. These Eldar Atar and these Eldoranway Heru Vital have not budged, so I was very wrong about this. The Eldoranway have, those mercenary guildsmen didn't even make a scratch in the Eldoranway Heru Vital. The Númenórean Shield Guard are a very good spearmen, but not as good as the Eldoranway, of course. With the support of the Castamir's Legion, you would imagine things would start to turn around. I'm actually surprised that they didn't try and force path them around so they could surround these elven spears. Meanwhile, we've got some Hiri Peng in the background, some skirmish support. Umbar again, sending forward some Corsair pikemen as well, so starting to really turn up the heat over here. More men being committed forwards into the settlement. What have we here? We are past the halfway point actually, so having a look at the, well, dead even in terms of percentage of kills, which is Better for the attackers than it is for the defenders, if past battles are anything to go by. Yeah, these Uruk-hai Berserkers have really done a number on the Black Swans. Again, the Uruk-hai Berserkers are not the sort of unit you really want to send the Black Swans against. Black Swans would have been much better off going up against standard Uruk-hai infantry, as opposed to something which doesn't really have the most armour, and something which can deal out huge amounts of damage in return. The Uruk-hai Berserkers are taking hits from the Belfalas Marines, however, as well. But over here you can see that the Imladra Sentries, they haven't really taken all that many losses since the battle began. And the Tirithea Wardens, not really the highest amount of damage being offered from them. Dora and Ernil Pikemen have been sent forward. But Dol Amroth certainly still having the most trouble in breaking through. Dol Amroth actually do have some cavalry in the background over there. Very basic cavalry, but even so, that could prove to be pretty handy in the late game if it's used correctly. But for the moment, Dol Amroth are the ones which are struggling the most to get into the settlement. It's over here where the attackers are having the most joy, of course. The Karaskaladhon's Guardians have come forward, and the Agwe Inanwaith are going to really start to struggle here, you would imagine, as Lothlorien's inexorable advance forward continues. The Lurtz Hunting Pack is here, and their body-piercing projectiles are going into this force over here, which going into the Sindar Archers, and over here, actually, with the support of the Skirmishers, Lothlorien's attack is starting to peter out. The Uruk-hai Berserkers, the Gwathi Arthand, and the Hiri Alth holding the line very well. There are some staff masses on the front line, but again, the damage they can do really is quite limited. Uruk-hai infantry waiting on the hill. That, I would assume, was right here, because I would assume that was Thranduil. So that's two of the defending generals that have already fallen. Which is not ideal for them, it must be said. Well, we've got some Uruk-hai crossbows getting on top of the hill over here. So yeah, the issue here that Lothlorien are going to have is that their manpower is running out. And the defenders are just sort of throwing more and more in to try and slow them down. The Uruk-hai crossbows getting in here to stop the Karaskaladhon's Guardians, which they're taking range fire, which is the way to deal with them. Well, there goes Haldia. So now Lothlorien's starting to take some real damage. It's possible that this might be the first battle on the Grey Havens we see where the defenders do not fall back to the town centre. They might simply try and hold the city outright. Which honestly at this point might be the best thing to do. Because they are going to win against Lothlorien over here, and there's not really much the others can do about it. Umbar, I think, are coming in here now with their warlords. Which the warlords, when they're sort of running free within the settlement, they're going to be a real issue. Because any of these skirmishers which are just sort of sat out on their own without support, the warlords are just going to be able to utterly vanquish. And there's a lot of skirmishers the defenders have, and also this will give them the ability to help Dol Amroth out a little bit, who need it, to be honest. You can see here the guards of Orthanc getting in behind, so Dol Amroth running out of infantry they can commit. There's another unit of Black Swans. There's some Belfalas Marines. Someone's army's broken. Is that Lothlorien? Did he admit defeat when I wasn't looking? I think it was. Are they all dead? I don't think the Sindar Archers break from just anything, so it's possible that he admitted defeat. Which is, you know, Lothlorien defeated, and considering things were going relatively well for them, they didn't really push on the other fronts, the defenders, and they were able to sort of, well, the attackers I should say, and the defenders were able to shift their skirmish forces, which is certainly their strength in this battle, you would say, with the combination of Uruk-hai crossbows, Elven archers, all the good stuff. They were able to do very well here, although this is a bit gung-ho from Pete, charging his Agwe Inanwaith, who have already been in battle against a block of 4th Legion, where they are going to be supported by this Maitha Ilazgalan, which might be enough. We shall see. Still, Lothlorien defeated. Not good for the attackers. The attackers will need to rally again. We'll see if they're able. These Tirithea Wardens, another unit of Tirithea Wardens came forward. The Imladra sentries are very slowly taking casualties. Let's go and have a look over here. You can see here the Warlords of Umbar taking damage from something that looks like javelins that are embedded in the ground as well, so they definitely don't want to stick around with the MITHLOND over here. Standing still. Meanwhile, the Corsair Savages have moved forward, which the AP is nice, but you need more than just AP to bring down the Imladris Guardians. There are some Abrazani Nadu Tariq, and the same thing applies to them, really. The Imladris Guardians are a cut above most other line infantry units in the game. Even the Castamir's Legion would struggle mightily against Imladris Guardians with an armour upgrade. Here comes some Corsair Blackguards, but the attackers need something to happen for them here. Umbar have probably made it the furthest into the settlement at this point. Some Castamir's Legion that have surrounded the MITHLOND, but I'm not sure whether they have the quality to make this really stick. Noratuno warriors fighting on the front line. Yeah, these Corsair Savages, I'd be very surprised if they didn't break, to be honest with you. They're taking a huge amount of damage. They're up against a very strong selection of Imladris units. The Delupeng are moving over the Lurtz hunting pack. That's probably the thing that the defenders have done best, to be honest with you. They've managed to shift the focus of their skirmish force around to where it's needed most, and at the moment it's needed over with the Umbar position. So they've already moved over the Delupeng and the Lurtz hunting pack. Their gruesome twosome of body-piercing ranger units. Those Corsair pikemen are not going to make it very far, you would imagine. Those Hiri Peng. I'd be very surprised if these Corsair pikemen got to the front line in any fit state to fight with the amount of arrows they're taking. They're already wavering. This is surely going to be the end of them. Meanwhile, over here, Castamir's Legion, they have managed to finish off a unit of MITHLOND, which is a boon for them. Meanwhile, here we can see a genuine push from the dwarves, and this defensive line, now we'll see what it's made of. So we've got some Hiri Lung, there was some Hiri Ek over here as well. In addition to the armour piercing offered by the Uruk-hai Berserkers, the Uruk-hai Pikes will try to keep their shape. But in the face of this many dwarves, I'm not so sure. The 1st Legion in particular outclassed the Uruk-hai Pikemen by a fair amount, it must be said. The Uruk-hai Infantry are here in reserve. You can see here, this is the dwarves just using their mass to buckle this formation. Again though, this is not the easiest defensive line to take on. If the dwarves push too hard, stuff like the Hiri Lung is going to be able to do a lot of damage to them. But I still think Khazad-dûm's infantry is going to be too strong here. They've got another unit of 1st Legion just waiting in reserve as well. The Thurni Tower have now sort of moved into their position, and they have an ideal shooting position up here on this little hill. And their support is going to be absolutely necessary to keep the dwarves at arm's length. That could be the difference maker here. The dwarves have got good shields, good armour, but they can't sort of discount the damage completely. Meanwhile, the 4th Legion, all on their own, trying to make something happen over here, but it's not going to work, not without any Lothlorien support whatsoever, especially not with the Gwaith Arthan. There's also still the Agwe Inanwe, and what's left of the dwarves set to fall apart, it must be said. Meanwhile, over here on the Dol Amroth front, we have the Tirithea Wardens fighting with the Heru Patal and the Sentries. The Sentries actually pushed out of position a little bit, but too little too late, I would think. Dol Amroth actually trying their best to make something genuinely happen now. These guards of Orthanc surrounded by Black Swans and Belfalas Marines, but they are going to be backed up by Uruk-hai Berserkers.
They have lost half their men.
Bobo pulling out there because he realises that the Doran Ernil archers are coming in. No, Dol Amroth might be able to get this defence out of the way, but I'm not sure whether they'll have enough to really make anything significant happen in the later portions of this battle. The Delupeng are falling back, the Lurtz hunting pack are fighting something. Fighting some Corsair Savages which have forced their way through. The Doran Ernil cavalry are in the settlement as well. That's a pretty big development, so that's probably why Umbar have been able to unseat this defence over here, the combination of the Warlords and the Dol Amroth cavalry. Making things happen over here, the Heru Quinga trying to get into position now. If the attackers are gonna turn this pretty sticky situation around, you would imagine it would be on the back of stuff like their cavalry, because with how much the defenders have invested in their ranged firepower, cavalry is going to be the ideal thing to deal with that, you would imagine. Meanwhile, the Black Swans moving away now from the Guards of Orthanc, who are going to be outnumbered too much, I think, even by the Belfalas Marines to withstand. And now let's see whether the combination of Dora and Ernil archers and Black Swan Vanguard will be enough to finally bring down these Uruk-hai berserkers. Yeah, there's not going to be enough Uruk-hai berserkers to fight their way out of this, so Dol Amroth will be able to force their way in. What do they have left though? They do have their Haven Guard, which was something else that I missed. Some Tirithea marksmen, their trebuchet. I'm not sure whether this is going to be enough to really bother the defenders over here, but Umbar have a lot of infantry left. You only have to look at the red on the map. These Balagire archers, however, have pushed too far, and they are now going to be put to the sword by the Elder Enway Heru Quinga. Let's go and see what's happening with this dwarven push over here. Have the Thurney Tower been able to slow this dwarven advance down enough? By the looks of things, no, because there are warriors of Khazad-dûm behind this defensive line at this point. Although, it does say that the dwarves have, defeat seems certain for the dwarves. And, Khazad-dûm at this point need to break through here if the attackers are going to have much joy in this fight, you would imagine. Wow. Bombardment coming in from the dwarven catapult, trying to take the teeth away from the Thurney Tower up here on the hill, but I feel as though this Elven Archer support has probably given this defensive line the support it needed to hold, to be honest with you. Khazad-dûm are going to need to send forward their elites if they're going to get through here. It looks like that is what Froggy is doing. The Legion Bodyguard and the Mithril Guard are coming forward, but at this point, is it going to be too little, too late? The attackers up in the other corner of the map, meanwhile. You only have to look at the mini-map to see how chaotic this fight is. The Black Swan Vanguard defeat is a distinct possibility. Ooh. Well, there goes the Umbar General. After a charge from the Warlords into the back of the Elder Enway Heru Quinga, unfortunately he impaled himself on one of their swords. But this defensive position over here is not doing all that well at this point. There are some Hiri Alth coming over to support. The Lurtz hunting pack are here as well. But, well, the Abrazanim are broken. There's another unit of Castamir's Legion coming forward now. The Delupeng, only 15 of them left, but they have also found themselves in the firing line of the Balagire archers just in behind. I'm not sure. Here comes another unit of Corsair Savages, which will add a lot of numbers to this attack, but going up against something like Hiri Alth is not really what they're designed for. We'll see how well they can do. Some more Corsairs in the background, so more Corsair pikemen. It is a close one, this. This could still go either way. Some Uruk-hai infantry coming over here to try and help out, along with the Elder Enway Heru Quinga, so trying to force Dol Amroth back once more. Still just this one unit of Black Swans. Whatever happened to the Haven Guard? They're here, but too indecisive. Too indecisive. They should have got in there and supported the Black Swans immediately. But as it is, not getting in there quickly enough. Now the Haven Guard will still be a fairly substantial hurdle for the defenders to overcome, but if all else fails, they can just try and overwhelm them with sheer numbers and surround them. There are some Gwathi Myrdain over here as well, which was something else that I missed in the compositions at the beginning. Which obviously in terms of AP line infantry at the top of the tree. And Dora and Ernil archers are certainly not going to be sufficient to bring down something as strong as them. Formerly known of course as the Smiths of Eregion. Some God Heli Einhour as well, so I missed basically all of the Imladris elites. But the God Heli are coming forward now, and obviously they double as very effective line infantry as well. Sending the Balagire archers packing, and you would imagine the Dol Amroth, it's probably all over for them. Slowly but surely they're being eaten away at. The Tirithea marksmen are going to try and shoot the Uruk-hai infantry, but the trebuchet is also forfeit at this point. Meanwhile, the dwarves, it looks as though they're making something happen now. The addition of those elites punching right through this defensive line has led to this defensive position starting to fall apart. Obviously there's also the Legion Bodyguard, the 1st Legion Pikes are in there as well, although there doesn't seem to be too many of them left. 12. They have the same shields as the Legion bodyguard, so it can be quite difficult to tell them apart at distance. It's Hearing Lang as well, but it looks as though this defensive line finally starting to fall. The Thurney Tower being relentlessly hunted by the Meteor Guard. There's also the Legion bodyguard coming forward now, trying to silence those pesky Elven archers. So Khazad-dûm will be victorious. Technically speaking, they can try and make a play for the town centre at this point, surely. That would be interesting to behold. Meanwhile, we have the God Helene. Do they still have ammunition? They're getting into a position where it looks like they're going to try and shoot the Haven Guard in the back. I mean, yeah, they do still have ammunition. I was going to say, even if they don't, to be fair, even if as infantry units, if they just charged in and surrounded the Haven Guard, that would probably be enough to bring them down. But Imrahil, I think, is not long for this world. The Haven Guard, obviously, good armour, multiple HP as well, but even so, victory seems certain though. So you know that Archer Fire needs to do its work quickly, because the Haruquinga, while they're good in melee, they're certainly not up to the same level as the Haven Guard with those mighty long swords. Meanwhile, the Gwathi Myrdain repositioning. Might be time to send some stuff back to the town centre actually, because things seem to be souring down there. Although, to be fair as well, Umbar still have enough left in the tank, it seems, to force their way in as well. So it might come down to a combination of Khazad-dûm and Umbar trying to get the attackers over the line here. We'll see. Because I don't think Dol Amroth are going to be able to dig their way out of this one. Again, the Haven Guard is strong, but it's pretty much all Dol Amroth have left, and they're being shot in the back by God Helene. Well, Trebuchet actually did manage to get away, and the Uruk-hai infantry is chasing something, I would imagine. There they go. The Benny Hill team will be playing for those two units. Trying to go after the Trebuchet, the God Helene. That's interesting, because that will allow the Haven Guard the time they need to essentially finish off these Haruquinga. There's one Uruk-hai crossbowman there, but he is extremely unlikely to get much done. And that will allow the Haven Guard to try and come out here and kill off the God Helene. So there is life left in Dol Amroth here. Just about. And at this point we might be coming down to the fact again where Khazad-dûm have got their elites. Is this going to be too much for the defenders to bear? They still have stuff like the Gwathi Myrdain and Arthand. But again, like the Khazad-dûm elite infantry is so strong. Catapult is moving forward. Still a few Elven units, a few Hearing Lang over here. Just trying to kill as many as they can before they fall. But we just entered the final 10,000 frames. And as we look, the defenders are ahead by 1%. I'm not sure whether that's going to hold. We shall see. How are Umbar getting on? There's still this Hiri Altho here, which is slowly but surely carving their way through Umbar. There's also the Elder Runway Masil, and honestly the addition of this unit over here leads me to believe that this fight has probably turned once again, and I don't think that Umbar are going to be around for too much longer, which is a big win for the defenders. If they can get Umbar off the field, they only then have to worry about a very, very depleted Dol Amroth and Khazad-dûm. The Gwathi Arthand are over here finishing off the Umbar catapult, trying to make sure there will be no artillery to worry about in the late game. Meanwhile, a battle of the Titans outside the walls here as the Haven Guard take on the God Helene. Although I would certainly back the Haven Guard, but I wasn't sure whether they would win purely because they had already taken damage and had been in combat. The God Helene, though, it's a very, very hotly contested fight. This is also the support of the Trebuchet crew. Only 9 of them, but even so. Whoever wins this is not really going to be in too good a shape when it's all over anyway. What's going on here? This Uruk-hai infantry, I think, is still chasing the Tirathea marksman. Might be time for them to come back into the settlement and do something a little bit more constructive. What have we here? Some defensive units from Mirkwood, some Argue Inanwe, some Maithit Ilaz Gellan, which can be deployed where necessary. Some Gwathi Myrdain, I think, trying to head over to this part of the map over here. They probably don't want to charge in on their lonesome, because they would probably make up the basis of the defence against Khazad-dûm. The Gwathi Myrdain would be an absolutely key unit trying to stop Khazad-dûm. as we move into the final phases of this fight, where everything will be decided. Still some 4th Legion. There's still the Dwarven Catapult, which is going to make life a little bit more difficult for the defenders. It means they can't just sort of try and bank up on the town centre or something similar. Bunch of routing units over here. Umbar, I would imagine, are not having the best time of it, the Arthand over there. And here are the last holdouts from Umbar. Some Corsair pikemen fighting bravely on, where many other elite units routed before them. But obviously, in this fight against some of the best units the elves have to offer, they are out of their depth, and they are indeed going to start fighting to the death, which at the very least will occupy this unit's attention, well, these units' attentions for a little bit longer. What have we here? The God Helem trying to get away. 14 of them remaining, so yeah, the Haven Guard would have won that. Obviously armour, those swords, which if they were both fully healthy I would have said the Haven Guard would certainly have won that, but I wasn't sure based on the damage the Haven Guard had taken, but it wasn't sufficient damage to tilt the fight in favour of the Imladris unit there. The Tirithea marksmen also taking pot shots at them. So Dol Amroth's still the part to play, despite having the roughest opening, having to face down all those body-piercing archers. They have managed to turn it around somewhat. Meanwhile, you can see here that Khazad-dûm are going to make a play for the town centre, it looks like. Those elites are charging across here, which they're well within their rights to do, because the defenders have not defended it at all. No units in reserve, which of course means, I mean, to be fair as well, they're not going to be able to take it. It takes 4 minutes to win by capping the town centre. All of these units are going to, it's not going to take 4 minutes for them to get all the way over there. So stuff like the Heru Masil, the Lurtz Hunting Pack, and all of these Mirkwood units would be able to arrive on scene. Wait, the Arthand as well. So this isn't going to win the battle for the attackers, but it will certainly force the defenders' hand. They're going to need to get back there. There's still these Dol Amroth units as well, which could have a part to play. You know, Tirithea marksmen and the Haven Guard, but they also need to get a move on if they're going to have much of a role to play, because this is where things are going to be decided. You know, either the dwarves will take the town centre and hold it, or their elite units will be taken out, and then, you know, slowly but surely the attackers will start to fall apart. The Gwathi Myrdain are over here. Now, interestingly enough, the fact that both of those elite units have gone to take the town centre means the Gwathi Myrdain will probably be just fine facing off against 4th Legion Shield Guard. There we go. So the timer begins. More 4th Legion moving forward. The catapult getting into position, which, you know, they could try and get the catapult into a place where they can shoot at the defenders as they move. Here comes some Uruk-hai infantry, some Maitha Ilaz Galan, and the Agwe Inanwith, or what's left of them anyway. 4th Legion Shield Guard moving across. You can see the Gwathi Myrdain flexing their muscles a little bit. They're still going to take a few losses to the 4th Legion, you would fancy, but they're certainly going to be victorious over here, and that will deprive the attackers of yet more vital manpower. And it's not going to matter anyway, because they're going to receive some backup from the Uruk-hai infantry, which is... Well, the Uruk-hai infantry could just circumvent this fight completely and try and go to the town centre to contest it with the dwarves, which I think is probably what's going to happen. It's a mad dash to the town centre at this point. The 4th Legion are over here going to try and block the way. The Uruk-hai infantry might be going for the catapult, actually. Bit of dodging and weaving there from the Uruk-hai infantry. The Agwe Inanwith coming forward. You would imagine that this 4th Legion is not going to last long at all. The Agwe Inanwith are over here now as well. So this is it. Froggy's last gambit to try and cap the town centre. So there is going to be a fight in the town centre after all, but I wouldn't necessarily call this a last stand situation. It's something very different to what we've seen from the Grey Havens before. Maitha Ilaz Galan getting some of their unit caught on the catapult. Catapult crew is now running. But the problem I think they're going to have now is all of Froggy's resistance over here has been wiped out. It's not going to take them 2 minutes to get over here. The Heru Masil also, so it's You know, they're all converging. Khazad-dûm's elites, as I've said before, very, very strong, but not quite strong enough to see them out of this situation, I would imagine. Maybe with the support of the Haven Guard, but the Haven Guard are so far away themselves. They're going to try and get there, but there's the Tirithea Marksman as well. It's a mad dash here. And here we go. This will be it, a final stand. Ironically, the final stand in the town centre will be made by the attackers, which is different. I don't think I've ever seen that before. It's something that you would have expected to have happened by now, but still, most defenders will sort of make their plan with falling back to the town centre in mind, but the defenders did not do that this time, so that's how this was allowed to happen, which I'm okay with. Something different, something new. And there we go. The timer has stopped, and that means, if the attackers are going to win this, they're going to have to try and slice their way through all that the defenders have left. And considering the units they have left, with the best one in the world, that's not going to happen. They've still got some very good units. The Harry Masil, both of the Gwaith units. Some battered Mirkwood units as well, just adding to that. Comes some Hiri Alth. The Harry Masil, obviously. Obviously, the Uruk-hai infantry not doing too well in this situation, but the Harry Masil will do significantly better. The Agwe Inanwe are also coming over here. And it's going to be a question of numbers, if nothing else. Some Maitha Ilaz Gelen also adding themselves to this assault. The Lurtz hunting pack, so no rest for the weary from a Khazad-dûm perspective here.
The enemy army flees the field. Pursue and run them down.
Someone admitted defeat. I would assume that's Umbar, because Dol Amroth is still here. Dol Amroth trying to get there, but I don't think they're going to be able to. And even if they do, there's going to be the Gwathi Myrdain there standing in the way, which at this point the Haven Guard would probably struggle to take on. The Gwathi Arthand are on their way over. The balance of forces is evenly matched. It goes to show how strong Khazad-dûm's elite infantry really is. He seems certain for these units. I mean, even the Harry Masil struggling a little bit. I'd be amazed if Khazad-dûm fought their way out of this though, because there's simply so many. More arriving as well, more elite units arriving at that. Although the Arthand, are they just going to completely ignore this fight and go over and try and take the Haven Guard? Actually a little risky. There's still 4k frames left. Or it could be that the Gwathi Myrdain are coming over for this fight and the Arthand are just going to try and hold back the Haven Guard, which probably for the best. As soon as the Myrdain arrive, that AP damage is going to be sort of the final nail in the coffin for the dwarves. And also they're starting to fall away anyway. A valiant effort from Froggy to try and salvage this situation, but ultimately it wasn't to be.
Victory will be ours.
A very close fight indeed. And the defenders will win again. How about that? It was a very different fight as well to what we've normally seen on the Grey Havens. There was that thick blizzard at the start, giving it a nice Christmassy theme now that we're in December. Harry Masil kicking the dwarves to death. Balin is in here somewhere, and indeed there he is. I'm amazed there's still Uruk-hai infantry left alive, considering they took the brunt of the damage from the Mithril Guard initially. Now the Myrdain have changed their mind, their presence is no longer required. So I would assume. Well, here are the Tirithea Marksmen, the Haven Guard are exhausted. Where is Balin? Here he is. Fighting against some of the Lurtz hunting pack. Some Agwe Inanwe in close attendance as well. Are there any Mithril Guard left? Not many. I can't actually hover over one to see, there's so few of them remaining. Only 5. A few more Legion Bodyguard, but this is going to be the end. A good fight, but I feel as though, again, a little bit more coordination was probably needed from the attackers. The fact that Dol Amroth charged in immediately into the thickest part of the defence was probably not the best idea. But also Lothlorien, initially it looked like things were going really well for them, but then they just petered out, and that is going to be the problem if you're super aggressive with the elves.
Our men are in command of the city.
Particularly when you're going into some nasty skirmish forces like the crossbows and the elven archers that were arrayed against them. You know, you don't have as much manpower, you can't afford as many casualties as like a faction like the Orcs, which that sort of tactic would probably have worked if they were playing as Angmar or someone. Lothlorien, a little bit less so. A little bit more support was needed, I think a little bit more. If they were going to do that, I feel as though honestly the best move the attackers could have made was just be super aggressive from the start. Because one thing the defenders were able to do throughout this battle really was they had that group of skirmishers which was shifting around from gate to gate. You know, wherever the danger was most apparent, they would shift over, and that was made up of like body-piercing archers like the Delu Peng and the Lurtz hunting pack. If the attackers had all attacked at once, they would not have been able to be at covering 4 gates at once. One player probably would have taken the brunt of that, which initially was looking like Dol Amroth. But that sacrifice would have been worth it in the long run. As it was, though, a little bit too fractured, a little bit too splintered, and that allowed the defenders to really organise themselves nicely, and they did a good job, the defenders. When you're outnumbered on the defence and you win, it's always a well fought victory, well earned. Haven Guard now facing the Gwathi Arthand, and the Gwathi Myrdain, so this is going to be the end of Dol Amroth, sandwiched between the 2 highest tier Imladris infantry units. The AP from the Myrdain in particular is going to be too much for them to bear. And this means the last attacking unit on the field will almost certainly be Tirithea Marksman.
Good tidings. The enemy general lies dead.
And there goes Imrahil. He's been through a lot this battle, Imrahil, him and his men. Initially it looked as though Dol Amroth were going to be the first attacking army to be vanquished, but in the end they are the last ones standing. So there is something to be said for that.
Fought long and are becoming tired.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you're becoming tired after all of this. Balance of forces is evenly matched. Not for long though. Not with the Gwathi Myrdain here. Still still 43 Haven Guard. Are you kidding me? I was going to say there's only 2. 43 Gwathi Arthan. As we move on to 2 speed, as these Tirithea marksmen are slowly but surely pasted into the dirt by Imladris. And now Mirkwood and Isengard also moving across to get in on the fun. Ooh. I think I'm getting a cold. Well, there goes the Tirithea marksman. So it's actually going to be the Haven Guard, the last one standing. Just this one dude, I think. Unless there's some unit which is far away. Well, there he goes. Still a red arrow over here. What is this? No one over here. Oh, no, wait, there was a dude hiding. This 1/3 Legion banner carrier. Technically speaking then, Froggy was the last player standing.
Our soldiers have fought and died well today.
There we go. A 5% difference, not counting obviously routed units. So, Starling getting the most kills, which not too surprising, I suppose. You know, he didn't have any of the body-piercing units, but his cavalry initially got a fair amount of kills on Umbar. You know, just in general did quite well. Lothlorien, yeah, I mean, probably not such, you know, Lothlorien, you know, that was not ideal from them. You know, it wasn't really the players' fault too much. I mean, they had to move forward when they did, I think, otherwise Dol Amroth would have just been crushed underfoot. But I feel as though the attackers as a whole just needed to move as a single unit. You know, someone was going to draw the short straw and have to charge into an area that was really well defended. But it would have allowed them to get into the settlement, and also that would have allowed the cavalry to find gaps and then start really doing some damage. If the attackers had used all their cavalry in a more coordinated fashion, the Galathan Riders, the Dol Amroth cavalry, the Warlords of Umbar in particular, Would have been very difficult for the defenders to stop, because the defenders were very dependent on their skirmishers in this fight, which they used well. Isengard bringing a little bit more in terms of numbers to the field, which certainly helped hold down the fort. A lot of Uruk-hai, Reavers, infantry and pikes in reserve to just sort of be deployed where necessary. And then the elves, obviously, very high quality units indeed. So let's see what did the damage for Starling. These units all getting over 200, so a lot of good damage there from the archers, as expected. Both of the Gwaith units getting over 200 kills. The Arth and actually getting more, but they were obviously up against lower quality Umbar units for the most part. Moving down, we can see that the Heru Hatal getting over 300 kills. Both units of Heru Hatal getting over 300 kills. The MVPs for Imladris, but then again they were also going up against units they were significantly stronger than, both up against Umbar and Dol Amroth. Eldar Atar did get focused down by the Umbar skirmishers. This unit of Noratuna warriors I think was the one that got clattered by the Warlords of Umbar and the Doran Ernil cavalry. Heru Myra getting a decent amount of kills considering they went into the Lion's Den very early on. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Very big thanks to Starling for sending this one in. Bit of a more Christmassy theme with the snow, and obviously it is the Christmas season. I'm sure though that the tournament will be more when the Christmas theme comes out a little bit more, as I'm sure there is. I did post a video on that, and obviously there will be stuff on the official channel as well. Regarding the tournament, which will be starting on the 14th and running till the 18th. I'm not sure when videos from that will be posted, but I'm sure it will be before Christmas Day itself. So yeah, Merry Christmas to one and all, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next.